Hi, ich bin Marco von
Hi,
iDoc.
I'm Marco from iDoc. In this video, we'll show you how to replace the back cover of your iPhone XS. The repair is difficult and very time-consuming because some parts are strongly glued in and many different parts need to be removed that are screwed on. You should plan about 2 to 3 hours. We recommend the following tools for the repair. Links to all tools can be found in the info box below the video. We offer the most important tool in the iDoc toolkit. Have fun with the repair. Before the repair, turn off your iPhone to avoid short circuits. Press and hold the standby button and one of the volume buttons, and then confirm to switch off the phone. To remove the display, first remove the two Pentalobe screws to the left and right of the lightning connector. Apple uses special Pentalobe screws here. The links to all necessary tools can be found in the video description. The display is strongly glued, so you should heat the glue to remove the display. Use a heat gun or a hairdryer. Note, however, that the iPhone is no longer waterproof after a repair. Heat the edges of the display to about 60 degrees Celsius. Take care not to overheat the device. As a rule of thumb, always heat the device only so far that you can still touch the heated area with your hand. Heating softens the glue a little bit and lets you remove the display. Now grab your suction cup and stick it to the bottom of the display. Next, pull on the suction cup and insert a plectrum into the space between display and frame. If you have been able to push the plectrum in a little bit, move the plectrum once around the frame and lever the display slightly upwards. If you can't get a plectrum into the gap between the display and the frame, you can use a thinner tool like the iFlex. But be careful not to scratch the frame nor go too far into the device with the tool. Also, when working with the plectrum, be careful not to insert it too far into the device. Heat the edge repeatedly and gradually loosen the display adhesive. Be especially careful on the right side, where the display connection cables are located. If the display of your iPhone is heavily splintered, we recommend working with adhesive tape. Take a wide piece of tape and stick it directly onto the splintered display. Then the suction cup will hold better and no glass splinters will fall into the device. Once the glue is loosened all around, you can fold open the display. Don't unfold the display too much, or the cables might get strained and suffer damage. Put a stable object next to the iPhone to support the display and make your device doesn't slip away. First, unplug the battery to prevent short circuits. Like the other connectors on the logic board, the battery connector is under a bracket. Remove the bracket's various Y-type screws. Be careful they're not the same length. Apple uses special screws again, which have a Y-shaped profile. Use a suitable Y-type screwdriver to avoid damaging the heads. The Wiha Y000 was developed together with iDoc and fits perfectly on the screws in the iPhone XS. Now remove the bracket and put all parts in the same box of a magnetic pad. Now carefully pry off the battery connector with a plastic spudger and bend the cable to the side. The display unit is connected with 3 connectors. Disconnect the 3 connectors one by one with a spudger. One of the connectors is a bit lower. Be extra careful so you don't damage the logic board. The cable on the left for the ear cup is lightly glued to the cable underneath. Be particularly careful with the cable as there may be problems with Face ID if it is damaged. Once all connectors are off, you can remove the display. There may still be some glue residue on the frame and display. Remove the Phillips and Y-type screws from the 2 cover plates. The screws have different lengths, so sort them correctly. The best way to do this is to use a magnetic mat. Then remove the lightly glued plates. Next, loosen the screw on the cover plate above the loudspeaker connector. Remove the cover plate and then disconnect the connector. Now you can lift the speaker and loosen the rubber strip on one side. The speaker is glued a little tighter into the frame, so you have to pull a little to remove it completely. For reassembly, remove any protruding adhesive and make sure the adhesive is flush and does not cover the openings in the frame. Unfasten the Phillips screw on the Taptic engine and unplug the connector. Now you can take out the Taptic engine. Now the 4 adhesive tapes are free. The strips have black pull straps where you can pull them out. Loosen the black tab with a pair of tweezers and pull it carefully. You can now pull out the adhesive strip with your fingers or grab it firmly with the tweezers and gradually wind it up. Keep the adhesive strips as flat as possible so that they do not tear. Hold the battery and iPhone firmly when you loosen the strips to prevent the battery from falling out. Be careful not to damage any other components or flex cables when pulling them out. If an adhesive strip tears, carefully lever out the battery with a wide spudger. Try not to bend the battery too much and, if necessary, heat the device from the underside. Once all adhesive strips are off, you can remove the battery. The dual camera is also secured with a cover plate. Loosen the 2 screws and remove the sheet metal. It's a bit hooked in on one side. Then remove the 2 connectors from the logic board. Now carefully lever one side to release the camera module and remove it from the device. The cable assembly with the front camera and the Face ID module is connected to the logic board with 3 connectors. Carefully disconnect all 3 connectors with a spudger. Then heat the slightly glued flex cables and pull them out of the back cover. Be particularly careful with this step, since any damage can lead to the loss of the Face ID function. The entire front camera assembly is hooked under on both sides. Lever it a little and then take it out. Make sure that no more cables are glued on. Two of the connectors on the logic board are still under a cover plate. For the screw with internal thread, also called standoff screw, you can use a thin slotted screwdriver. There are also special screwdrivers with a cross profile and a pin in the middle. The profile fits exactly on the screw head and cannot slip when screwing. The connectors are very tightly connected to the logic board and not so easy to loosen. If you can't get any further with a spudger, you can also lever very carefully with tweezers or another thin tool. Then disconnect all other connectors from the logic board. They are connecting, for example, the charging socket, the flashlight and the volume buttons. Then release the SIM card holder and take it out. Finally, loosen the screws of the motherboard. Carefully bend all flex cables to the side and then remove the logic board. Where the headphone socket used to be, there is now a small plastic cover screwed on. Loosen both screws and remove the part. For the standoff screws, you can use a slot screwdriver or a flat cross slot with centering pin. The flex cable of the charging port is glued in the back cover and held in place with several screws. To get to one of the lower screws, you first have to remove a small piece of plastic with a microphone from the frame. Lever carefully until you can bend the part a little to the side. Then loosen all screws of the lightning connector. The 2 long screws that lead down are a bit more difficult to loosen. Heat the whole flex cable with the hot air to loosen the glue more easily. Slide the steel spatula under the cable and gradually remove it from the back cover. Be careful not to damage it with a sharp edge of your tool. Lever the charging port out of its guide and then loosen the rest of the cable. Heat several times to make the glue easier to remove. If everything is loose, you can remove the lightning flex cable. Now take out the other flex cable at the lower part of the device. Loosen the different screws that hold the cable in place. Use hot air again and loosen the cable gradually. This cable connects the speaker with the logic board. Another antenna flex cable leads around the opening of the cameras. First loosen the screws and then remove the cable with the tweezers. The cable is not glued and only slightly hooked in at the upper side. The flash and the power button are the same flex cable. First loosen the screws that hold the button in place. Then heat up again and loosen the thin cable carefully. Flip the cable to the side and use a pair of tweezers to remove the flash and the small microphone from their holders. The microphone for video recording is stronger glued on. Remove the black frame around the flash. The next antenna cable is mainly responsible for the Wi-Fi and is glued on the upper side of the device and secured with several screws. Some screws also hold small parts. Hold the brackets firmly with the tweezers and remember their alignment so that you can screw them back in correctly later. Then remove all other screws. You can then heat the cable assembly and carefully loosen it from the back cover with a steel spatula. Finally, take out the cable. Next, remove the brackets for the display. On one side they are covered with a long rubber strip. Loosen all screws that hold the clamps. Note the orientation of the brackets here. If they are inserted incorrectly later, the display will not fit correctly. The mute switch, the volume keys and the charging coil are on a shared cable assembly. The buttons are screwed into the housing and the cable is glued on. Loosen all screws first and then heat the whole flex cable. Loosen the cable carefully with the steel spatula and heat it several times if it cannot be loosened easily. Continue by loosening the cover of the charging coil so that you can proceed with a wider tool. We had quite good results with the iPlastics. The soft, flexible tool fits easily under the charging coil and does not scratch the lacquer layer on the inside of the back cover or damage the coil. Heat several times and gradually loosen the coil until you can remove it from the device. In the last step, the buttons themselves are removed. This is a bit trickier and needs some patience. The buttons are secured with a metal bracket that is hooked in on both sides. Pull out the handle on one side and then remove it. The buttons are still fixed with a holder. This small metal holder can be levered out upwards on one side and then pulled out. Then you can remove the button from the back cover. The same procedure is used for the other two buttons. First remove the bracket, then lever the holder upwards and take it out and then remove the button. All parts are now removed and you can start with the reassembly. Before you start, you should compare your spare part with the old back cover and check if you still have to take over small parts like brackets or seals. Place both back covers next to each other and take over all necessary parts. This includes spacers and gaskets, for example. Don't forget the SIM pin, otherwise you won't be able to remove the SIM card holder later. Since our back cover is still intact, we have not used a new spare part for these repair guide. But the procedure is the same. Now install all buttons again. You don't have to pay attention to which way you put the buttons into their openings because the buttons are symmetrical. Then put the holder on and press it firmly until it clicks into place. Flip it over and insert the metal bracket first on one side and then on the other. Do the same for the other two buttons. Next, insert the cable assembly for the volume keys and the charging coil. Put the coil in its place and position the metal holders for the buttons. Use the screw holes for orientation and make sure that the mute switch bracket sits above the other bracket. Then lead the thin flex cable down and check the position of the charging coil again. When everything is in place, you can reattach all the screws. Insert the lower display bracket under the holder of the flex cable and screw it together. Insert the other brackets. Make sure to screw them the right way round, otherwise the display will not fit properly. The second screw hole of the third bracket remains free. Apply the long rubber strip and press it firmly so that it sits. Place the flex cable in its position and use the different screw openings to guide the cable in the right position. Press it down a little everywhere and make sure that it sits correctly on the sides of the back cover. Screw on the flex cable and insert the brackets as well. Align them with the tweezers and then screw them on. Before inserting the flex cable with the flash, make sure you do not forget the thin rubber frame. Place it in the opening and make sure it is aligned correctly. Also check that the adhesive is properly seated on the microphone and then place the microphone in its opening. Flip the flash over and attach the metal holder of the standby button to the frame. Then glue the thin flex cable flat to the back cover and screw the metal bracket on. Insert the antenna flex cable into the device and orient yourself by the screw holes to align it correctly. Lead it around the frame of the cameras and screw it down with the different screws. Position the next flex cable in its place at the bottom of the back cover and press it down so that it sits flush everywhere. Then you can screw it back on again. Insert the lightning connector into the iPhone and push the charging socket into its opening at the bottom. Lead the flexible cable under the other and then along the edge. Screw the lightning connector on and insert the screw of the other flexible cable on the side. Then press the microphone unit against the lower edge of the housing. Guide the small tab into the opening in the frame so that the microphone sits correctly. Place the barometric cover in position and push it down when tightening it with the screw. Check if all flex cables lay flat in the back cover and insert the logic board. Bend all cables a bit to the side so that you don't trap any of them under the logic board. Secure the logic board with the screws. Insert the SIM card holder. You shouldn't feel any strong resistance, otherwise the logic board might not sit correctly. Then plug in all connectors. Take your time and proceed carefully. Position the connectors above their sockets on the logic board and press carefully. The connectors should engage easily. Don't slide the connectors from side to side and try not to push them down with force. Use a spudger for the small connectors at the top to push them down. Hook the cover plate of the two connectors on one side under and screw it down. Now place the assembly part with front camera and Face ID module in the device. Hook the metal brackets on both sides until the whole unit is in place. Then press the flex cables a little tight. Connect all 3 connectors on the logic board. If a flex cable is not yet sitting properly flush, correct it again. Make sure that there is no dust or fingerprints on the camera lenses and on the inside of the camera cover. Then insert the camera module into the device and connect the 2 connectors. The cover plate has 2 small metal tabs on one side, which must be hooked in at the side. Then fold the metal plate over and screw it on. To fasten the battery properly and remove it again in case of another repair, we recommend that you use new adhesive strips. Remove the large blue protective film and place the adhesive strips squarely on the bottom side of the battery. Make sure it's not too far up or down so you can easily fold over the tabs. Stick the tabs firmly to the edge of the battery. Then remove the large pink film from the adhesive strips. Now you can stick the battery to the phone. First, put in the battery on the top edge without sticking it in so you can position it. The connector should be located right over its slot on the logic board. Leave some space on all sides of the battery. Once the battery is positioned right, you can fold it in and press it in to make it stick. Now you can install all the other parts. First, put the Taptic engine back in the device. Make sure that the screw holes of the Taptic engine are sitting right. Plug the Taptic engine connector back in and fasten it using the Phillips screw. Put the speaker back in its place and push it towards the bottom so that it sticks a little. Be careful not to pinch the rubber strip under the speaker. Then connect the connector of the speaker and screw the cover plate with the single screw. Now put both cover plates in place and screw them in. Hold the plates in place at first and then gradually insert all screws. Here in the video you can see the iPhone X, but the procedure is the same for the iPhone XS. First, remove all glue residue, so the new glue will hold. But do remember that the iPhone will no longer be 100% waterproof. Before attaching the frame sticker, make sure it's aligned right. The corners and the holes for the camera show you which way is up or down. Now remove the first backing film. First, put the frame smoothly on one side of the device and press it on slightly. Then press on the sticker all around. Make sure that the sticker stays inside of the frame all around. Grab a spudger to make the frame sticker hold properly. Now you can remove the second big carrier film. You can remove the last small part of film now or after connecting and testing the display. Leaving the film on prevents the display from sticking too early. Place the display unit on the edge of the frame and lean it to a stable object so the sensitive flex cables don't get strained. Make sure your device doesn't slip away. Connect the 3 display connectors. Use your tweezers to position the earpiece connector over its socket. Carefully press the connector onto its socket. Don't slide them around over their logic board sockets or the contacts might get damaged. Now you can plug in the battery connector. Then attach the bracket plate and fasten it using the Y-type screws. Now carefully fold and close the display. Make sure the display is sitting right before you press it on. Gradually press down the display so it's sitting on the frame right. Press on the display a while to let the glue bond. Now you can fasten the Pentalobe screws at the lower end of the iPhone. Your iPhone is fixed now, and we hope it was fun for you. If you have any questions, just write a comment or check out the photo guide on our website. There you can also find spare parts and high-quality tools in our online shop. To support us, subscribe to our channel and give the video a thumbs up. See you next time.